What's going on, people? How are you all doing tonight? Welcome to another episode of the Album Club. I'm Marty. We got TJ up there, the dark lead Ted, or dark lead Ted. Jim down in the corner from Eihwaz Recordings. Kellen from Killing for Company. Everybody, hello. How is it going?
How's everyone?
What up?
TJ looks a little more calm. TJ looks a little bit more calm now that it's not a power metal selection tonight. He looks relaxed. He doesn't look agitated.
I'm tired and I'm trying to figure out what this smell is, but otherwise I don't know. I'm good.
Yep. Well, we all wonder that too sometimes. Yep. Is there any, before we get started, TJ, is there any disclaimer you'd like to read this time, or is this a disclaimer free zone this week?
No, man. I'm today it's just another day, man. Right, back in my wheelhouse.
Well, for those of you that may not have known, Kellen last week chose Necrovation's 2012 second full-length album. It's the last album they put out. Self-titled, and a little bit of info on the band. Necrovation is a death metal band from Eihwaz, Sweden. They formed in 2002 under the name Das Überevils. Stupid name. When they changed the name, they adopted more of a serious sound and got into more of an old school death metal sound. They were considered one of the major Swedish one of the major bands in the Swedish OSDM revival. So yeah. Jim, what were your initial thoughts on this one?
It's pretty great, man. I love the variety of riffs in this. I love how the album starts and gets right to the point. Don't get me wrong. I know that intros are ubiquitous in extreme metal and kind of expected, but there's something to be said for just immediately launching right into the first song. So it kind of grabbed me right away, and with the kind of peaks and valleys and tempos and stuff like that, there's just a lot to unpack here. So I took to it right away. The production was a little surprising. I felt it to be a little more black metal than death metal, but it just kind of gave it another shade. So yeah, I kind of really took some time, picking this apart, and it was a good surprise. I didn't know what I was getting into, so it was nice.
All right, TJ. Uh-oh.
Slow-mo.
I think I'm having some connectivity issues.
No.
There.
Yeah. There you are.
Yep, there we go.
We'll go to Kellen next. We'll put you on, and we'll let you figure that out.
That's fine.
Well, maybe it'll smooth out by the time it circles back around here. Okay, Kellen.
I thought that was
the wind's really blowing out here.
Yeah,
or there was going to be the most dramatic pause and turn to answer the question. Just slow-mo. Okay, yeah. So first impression, going back to 2012, right? I think that's probably one of the reasons that this record has stood with me, is just relative to what was happening within death metal at the time. This seemed to be like, it was interesting to have bands who, especially who were young, who were looking to try and not just do death metal in a way that seemed to be pushing back at or against what so much the 2000s had established, but also trying to reach for new territory, trying to do something different. I think that's something that is sort of lost, and I feel I hear less and less of. And to try and balance the two of those things. And Necrovation, especially on this record, was, I think, a good example of a band who was trying to, yes, not do a lot of the 2000s sort of technical death metal stuff, but also was not just trying to do a lot of really what was at the time like very popular sort of incantation revivalist like stuff, or HM2 pure like Swedish death metal. Took a band like Demonical as in a good example, like great whatever Swedish death metal that was coming out at the time, but I don't really think of them as one that was trying to push new grounds. Essentially, is just trying to do Swedish death metal really well. I think Necrovation is an example, and other peers at the time that were coming out, like the first Tribulation record, Morbus Kron, or others that sort of get grouped into that. So there's this part of Swedish death metal history, like if I look at Entomb, Dismember, Unleashed, for example, then I think of bands that came after Bloodbath, Vomitory, Nomenon, Demonical. Then happens this next generation happens, Tribulation, Morbus Kron, and here we're talking about Necrovation. There was something different going on with this band. What's interesting is relative to their peers, what happened to those bands. We'll kind of get into that later. But this band I thought was the most promising and the one I was most excited about, and then just fell off after that. And I was kind of curious to explore this record and this time period with all of you good people. So
Right on. All right, TJ, let's see what you got. It looks like you're moving again. So
Yeah, so it's blowing out here. So my internet lives up in a tree, and so that wind gets blowing, and it's just like, Anyway, yeah, I mean, I was initially expecting, real straight old school death, and it's really what it is. But then you dig into it, and it's like there's definitely, they're trying to do different things in here. I don't know if it all works necessarily. Again, we'll get farther in as we go, but my first impressions initially was it's old school band, old school style band. I was getting hints of all kinds of different things. They're still making, it's still kind of their own. They're not really living in anybody else's ruts with this, though. Their sound wise, I really felt like they were kind of speaking with their own voice on this record. So I thought that was pretty cool. Again, there was some spots that I thought kind of fell a little flat. But I still, and for me, and I've said before, I'm inspired to listen to bands try to do things different and to look outside the wheelhouse a little bit, without getting so bizarre that it gets completely lost. But it's my first impressions were about what, initially it was just like, yeah, this is, pretty kind of straightforward old school death metal style band. But then it definitely lit some surprises on me.
all right. For me, I've heard this album before. It's been a while. I think I had a CDR of it. I also have their debut on CD, black on black print. Always a dumb idea, but it's funny. I haven't listened to this album in ages, and reading the Wikipedia thing and Kellen's question, talking about old school death metal revival. I listen to this album. I don't hear old school death metal. That to me in this day and age, maybe in 2012, this would have meant something different than it means now. Old school death metal to me these days are bands like Cerebral Rot, any band that's on Maggot Stomp. They have this big polluted, dense, cavernous sound. They all sound very similar to each other. This band to me on this album is there's some anchors in the extreme death metal realm, but they're also experimenting a lot on this record with the music. There's a lot of segments of music on this record that are just like not even tremolo pick notes, just notey, meandering type of riffs, and that's cool. I really appreciate that. They're trying something different. They don't even sound Swedish. They don't even sound like they're a Swedish band. They sound to me like they would have been a lesser player in the Australian scene opening for Destroyer 666 back in the day. Just the opening band. They never make it to the big leagues. They were just opening. And I like it. I think I prefer the debut better after listening to them back to back here the last couple days. The songs seem a little bit more normal on the first one. But they still, with that mid-range snarled vocal style, doesn't sound Swedish, and there's a triumphant feel in some of the riffs that makes me think of Australia. It just has that triumphant, stately feel in the music, which I think is really cool. But yeah, we'll get into what I think happens with it. But Kellen proposed a question. Necrovation seemingly dropped off the face of the earth after their self-titled release in 2012, which is the one we're covering tonight, with an EP on Blood Harvest this year, which actually Kellen and I just got a promo of this EP in the mail today in the email box. They have teased a return, but do so at a time when the OSDM scene that they gave a rise to has become incredibly saturated, which is incredibly true. While they proved to be unique amongst their peers more than a decade ago, could they break through in the death metal world today? Has their moment for greater praise and recognition passed them by? Jim, your thoughts?
First of all, I agree with you, Marty. I when I think old school death metal, I don't hear that in Necrovation. I hear something a lot stranger. I've only heard this album though. I haven't heard anything else. No demos, no first album, nothing. So just judging by this, I think this, to your point, I think it's very weird. It doesn't sound anything like when I think old school. I think Entombed. I think Dismember. I think anything from Florida in the '90s or Old Incantation, stuff like that. I don't hear that in this. I mean, I hear guys who are probably kind of bored with the typical, death metal riffs and really trying something different, like playing farther up on the fret, making use of all 6 strings, during on a rhythm and not just a lead. And so, yeah, I mean, and I think for that same reason, though, that they do have a chance to make a bigger appearance in the modern realm, because this isn't Frozen Soul. It's not a bolt thrower riff that sounded better 30 years ago. No offense against them. It's just they just don't have a lot going on that excites me. They got some cool riffs, but it's too much rehashing and not enough of their own personality. Where I think Necrovation, on the other hand, this is all personality. So I think that at least for people that what I like to call the seekers, which is everyone in this chat and everyone on this call, we're the seekers. We're looking for something that has a little bit more color. It's okay sometimes to drink a beer and listen to something that reminds you of something you've heard 10,000 times before. But if these guys continue to challenge on their new stuff the way that they have here, I do think, at least among those, that are looking for something a little bit more, discerning, they're going to find it. If Necrovation has for some reason decided to forsake that on their new release and go super simple, then yeah, I think they run the risk of, falling amongst that. What's that one guy's name from Sweden, Rogge. I can remember. He has like
Roga?
10 million bands. Yeah, Roga. He has like 10 million bands. You know what I mean? Yeah. As long as they're staying away from that, kind of simplicity, I think that they have a shot. Though, it is going to be hard because we're talking, as Kellen mentioned, it's been 11 years, and somehow these guys I completely miss them. I've never heard anything. I've the name I've heard, but I've never listened to them before. So it may take shows like this, YouTubers talking about it to get them a little bit more eyes. But as long as they've continued to push against some boundaries, and I feel, in my personal opinion, Metal Archives got it wrong. This should be black death metal. This isn't just death metal. This is definitely, for me, a combination of black metal and death metal. I hear triads on here. I hear unmuted tremolo riffing. I hear more of a thin guitar tone. This to me is modern black death. But still a little bit more black, and they're black than just death metal. So hope that answers his question.
Right on. TJ.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a pretty their voice, the way that the band has I was picking out little pieces of all kinds of things, and I definitely agree with Jim. this is definitely, they have a blackened sound. The production has a very blackened sound, the guitar tone, but it was still very much kind of in the, I still feel like they were shooting for the old school aesthetic for death metal. But I was picking up, stuff in here like Death Breath and things like that. And, the skankiness of it is what where there was almost like, just a groovy, skanky kind of, instead of a straightforward, like the first track really comes in. But anyway, I guess, these guys,
roots? Don't these guys have some punk roots, TJ?
I don't know.
I was looking at where the band, the members are from. There are a bunch of bands I've never heard of. Not a bunch. There's not many bands. This Necrovation band is kind of, they didn't do a lot of band hopping, which is kind of crazy. There's a couple bands,
right? But it's definitely, it's got some of that groove to it. I mean, it's just I was picking up on it, just kind of that skank and roll, death and roll kind of, and that fall, 2012. I mean, that's all kind of in that wheelhouse, time wise with some of that stuff. But I think, some of their ideas, I think, were getting lost in the weeds, because they were making, the record was making a really good point, and then kind of whatever. And I think if they, if they keep working on that and they're coming back with the new stuff, and I didn't go back. Normally I go back and check out some of the old stuff too, and I didn't do that this time. This week between these I just was having a hell of a time to get good solid listens in on this one. And but I think that if they keep expanding on what they're doing, and they really do have a good kind of feel of their own, I don't see why they couldn't come in and be relevant. But again, they're, the scene is so kind of, polluted with so many bands, so many great bands, it's so hard to keep track of and stay on top of and get out there and stand out. It's like, would this stick out as something that's, I don't know, if they keep working on it, because the product here is good, and I can't see why they couldn't just build on the foundation they've established with this. So I can't see any reason why they wouldn't be. But then again, you're fighting against the current of things and upstream, so to speak. So only another release, and you see what they have to deliver on. Which do they want to stand their ground on what they did with this, or do they want to take the more bizarre elements of this and spiral it up into the stratosphere of bizarro land? Who knows? But I'll be interested to hear that EP. So I think there's enough talent and enough attention to detail with what they're doing that they could definitely keep the ball rolling if they come back with something solid, for sure.
Well, they've had 11 years to think about it.
11 years, yeah.
11 years.
Yeah.
Kellen, your thoughts?
Doesn't mean anything.
No.
So I don't know, even if they were to, like, if let's say this EP comes out and the following year we get a full length. If this is now I personally, like, I know we differ here, Marty. I actually like this record more than their first one. Their first record, to me, I know we've talked about like the blackened element to this. That came out in 2008. It's the same year I think we get the first Fathered Befoul full length, and the one that's probably most notable for me is Graves of the Archangels by Dead Congregation.
They're so good. Yeah.
And those bands to me have blackened elements.
Do you think Dead Congregation had blackened elements?
For sure. I don't mean in the same way.
It's been a while since I've spun them, but yeah.
Not in the same way I think that you're referring to. Like, I wouldn't classify them in the Destroyer 666 kind of blackened elements, but
I don't even think they're very blackened. They came from a bestial war metal place, right, and really developed into amazing riff writers, and they lost it over the years. Sorry, but for a lot of reasons they lost it. But the riffs, they're just not there anymore like they used to be,
For sure. But I'm specifically talking about like this super dark, oppressive atmosphere, right? And And I think these, though the bands that I just mentioned, Dead Congregation, Father Befouled, and this first Necrovation record, I think to your point about being a little bit more normal death metal, I think that's kind of what we're going for.
Yeah.
By the time we arrive in 2012, I think what's interesting for me to think about it is I was wanting forward-thinking death metal back in 2012. So
Sure.
to think about like the Cerebral Rots of the world, the Frozen Souls of the world, like here we are a decade later, and I don't think it's not like we're pushing boundaries, right? Like I think,
progress stopped. If anything, it's regressed.
right. So the reason I think that's interesting about breaking through now is I don't know if the death metal fan base, especially a younger fan base, wants this, right? The band that I actually would liken this record to most would be something like The Chasm for me.
You know what? That's really a pretty cool comparison. Yeah.
Especially with the new record. The guitar sound. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Very, very similar. Yeah.
And we'll kind of get into their songwriting style, but I don't know how much of an appetite people have for that right now. It's a little bit more challenging to digest. And I think this record is not necessarily an easy death metal listen at times. It's a little bit odd and weird, and they take sort of strange turns. So being able to break through right now, I kind of feel hesitant. And when I think about the other bands from Sweden, like Tribulation has completely, like, they're a goth death thing now. Morbus Kron sort of dissolved into a Sweven, which is kind of prog death. So those were like the major Swedish bands that were coming out at the time, and I feel like they've kind of moved on. So for a band to sort of come back and reassert who they were a decade, I don't know how much of an audience there would be for it, which is kind of sad because, to your point of this moment sort of passing them by, if they had stayed playing and putting out records, where would they be today? Would they be, on a larger label? Would they be more visible? Maybe they have changed, but to some degree, like, I look back at those early Tribulation and Morbus Kron records as incredibly influential, despite how they sort of have evolved over the years. And I think people should credit them for starting what has been a defining part of metal culture over the past decade plus. So I'm kind of, at some point, I feel frustrated for this band because I want them to be included in the conversation, but because they have not been consistent in putting out new music, they sort of have fallen by the wayside. And everyone here is sort of echoing that point, like they haven't picked up or thought about this band for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So, which I think is kind of a sad point to have a band sort of just fall off the face of the earth like that. So I'm super excited for it, but I don't know if people, hopefully the seekers here will keep on pushing, so people kind of get the word out and then they know. But I hope it's well received. I just fear that at some level, this moment, they have sort of lost their, lightning in a bottle moment as a band.
Okay. Focusing on the last part of your question, they proved to be unique. Could they break through in the death metal world of today? Again, I'm going to reiterate the fact that what is really popular right now is knuckle dragging, cavernous death metal. And that's what is kind of known right now as OSDM in a lot of circles that I've been paying attention to online in particular. And let's face it, people, when a style is hot like that, that's what people gravitate towards. That's what people talk about. That's what they buy endlessly until they burn themselves out on it. This Necrovation record, if it came out today, I think it would be appreciated by people that are into that style, but it doesn't fit. It's just not the same type of beast to me. It just sounds, it's a band that had more of a plain presentation on their first album, but still it was very fierce and pointed, and again, really good riff writing, kind of triumphant sounding. That snarled mid-range tone made it kind of black metal in feeling. But this album is a lot more forward thinking. It's a lot more adventurous. And I just think it would go over the heads of a lot of people. People tend to gravitate towards, I'm the same way, man. You know, back in the day when I was just completely overrun by hundreds and hundreds of promos, and I would get so burnt out on the current flavor that it would take a unique band for me to say, wow, these guys are so great. They're doing something different. I'd be excited about it. But years pass and all those super technical, adventurous, unique bands and albums, I rarely listen to because I don't want to listen to it because it's too overstimulating, or, you know, sometimes I just want to put on For Victory and headbang and air guitar, or I just want to put on Left Hand
Every
Path.
day.
That's right. And a band like Necrovation, I really appreciate what they're doing because they're happening upon some cool stuff, but it's pretty different than the current flavor. So do I think that they would make a lot of waves today? No. And I think we're going to see what happens. They've kind of squandered, like you mentioned, Kellen, they've squandered a lot of opportunity. They've squandered a lot of growth. You know, they've had 11 years to pour into this, whatever. I mean, there's a 7-inch about to drop, you know, 7 inches, man. I mean, they appeal to such a small niche of people. I mean, they're a pain in the ass to listen to. They're expensive to produce, and hopefully they're going to follow it up with an album, and hopefully they've got the guts and the grit behind it to put into a whole. And I'm going to be really interested to hear what 11 years has done. Were they in a state of arrested development? Did they hit pause on the band and go upon their lives? Because they're, like I said, going over their Bandcamp list, they haven't been in a bunch of bands. They haven't. There's been a couple, probably, and most of them are older. There's been nothing new recent that they've been in the last 11 years. So these are guys that are probably working on their careers and families and who knows what. And it's just getting to the point now where their kids have grown up. Let's get the band back together. So it's going to be interesting to hear if they were in a state of arrested development, or if the forward thinking ideas that were on the self-titled album, you know, have had time to simmer and grow into something more substantial. But yeah, let's talk about that a little bit on this record. Let's talk about the musicality and composition. What do you think, Jim?
Well, you know, I already alluded to it. You know, lots of variety here. What they do a lot is like a lot of cool layering. The riffs just have a lot of twists and turns into them, but you know, the beats behind them are very straightforward. Like you're not getting a lot of odd time signatures and stuff like that, but the riffs kind of just weave in and out of the drums. It's almost like. And I even wrote this down. I'm like, well, it seems like the drummer's just doing whatever he wants to do, isn't paying attention to the guitar sometimes, in a good way. Not like it's out of time, but just like, okay, they're being weird, and I'm just going to play 4/4 on double bass for, a few measures or whatever. And but somehow that sort of like, I hate to use the word disconnect, but it's the only one that's coming to my mind. The sort of disconnect between the guitars and the drums are part of what makes it interesting. Everybody is very solid musicians for sure. There's, a lot of like, intricate like doom moments with some layered like, it kind of haunting like melody lines going over them, but like the riff behind it's like super big and the drums are stomping like, and so just a lot to take in. It's multiple listens before you can kind of wrap your head around it. When you start off with the first song, which is definitely one of my favorites, Necrovation Insurrection, you're kind of thinking like, okay, it's going to be brutalized like this the whole album, but that's just totally not the case at all. Pulse of Towering Madness, the third track, which is one of my favorites, has a very sort of like down picked thing that should not be Swedish style going on, just very heavy, dark, but in a way that isn't like your typical death metal. But then you've got also on Dark Lead Dead. The first three songs are just amazing on this thing. Or is it Dark Lead Dead or Dark Lead Dead? I don't know. We'll go with Dark Lead Dead. There's a wah pedal going on in there, man. Just like on the second song, like, whoa, what's happening here? And then it gets crazy. They do the scale, and like as the song is fading out, it's like, but then this heavy delay on this one scale, and everything else is just blaring heavy around it, and it just you hear this weird scale, and it just kind of just keeps echoing and echoing, and they play it like off, on, and in the distance. I'm like, where did that even come from? The idea to do that. Hey man, I'm going to do a scale and with a lot of delay, but I'm not going to do anything else. You guys keep playing. And so just the thoughts behind the choices there. You gave me pause in a good way. Like wait, what's going on, man? So musicality, man, composition, very interesting. These guys go left when you think they're going to go right. Even though again that's sort of like very familiar. Coming out of like, the skank beat into the halftime thing, which, a lot of like modern black metal does that. It's like, kind of fast guys and then halftime like that, then the roaring over it, all that's there, which kind of like brings you in. But what the guitars are doing, like keep it fresh, throughout. So, I think these guys are definitely fantastic musicians, have a lot of great ideas, and hopefully they've continued to grow, because it's really hard to do this, to take death metal or black death metal, whatever you want to call it, and twist it a little bit without putting your head up your ass and getting so self-indulgent that it isn't fun to listen to. And these guys kind of walk that line, and they stay just to the inside of it where it's still metal. It's just unique. So kudos to them for that.
Right on. Okay, TJ.
Yeah, like I said before, I feel like these guys really struck on their own kind of feel for what they're doing. I was able to pick little pieces out, and you could, some of their influences are on their sleeve like anybody, but I really feel like they struck a pretty good balance with trying to, coming across in a unique way and making the record. There's a couple spots, but where things kind of fall a little flat. I felt like some of the riffing was a little, whatever, flat, but like I agree, like what a lot of Jim was saying, where they, they're coming up with some really neat ideas and trying some different stuff and taking chances with things. And I always approve of that, whether I necessarily like it or not. I just think it's cool when you try to take chances with stuff inside what you're trying to say musically and step out a little bit. Cause I know, like for myself, I don't always, when I try to write, playing it, I'm a guitar player in a band, in Marty's band. And, I don't always, I see other guys doing it. And I don't, sometimes I feel like I don't take enough chances with stuff, and and I get stuck in formulas and stuff. So initially it was a kind of like in the second track there. At first it kind of struck me a little weird, that whole kind of bizarre scale thing that they were playing, and I don't know, but then the more I listened to it and stuff, it ended up becoming one of my favorite tracks on the record. Definitely, they're definitely trying to do some cool stuff on here and keep this record interesting and inventive. I think they're definitely talented. I think they're doing some really killer shit on here. Not every single piece of it won me over, but by and large, it was really cool. Their composition, the structures, their songwriting craft, if you want to call it that, they're definitely putting stuff together in a way that makes sense and has good feel to it and good flow. And the songs, they're like I said, there's moments where it gets lost in the weeds, but by and large, it all really flowed well and went well. It's definitely cool. Again, like I said, I'm going to check out that EP tomorrow. So it's up on their Bandcamp. So
is it?
I'm interested to hear what they're doing. Yeah. I think that's what it's got, like a weird skull on it or something. You guys got it in the mail, didn't you?
Yeah.
We got a promo of it. Yeah. They're
Gloria Mortis.
Their EP covers, I'm sorry, they're not the greatest. Their artwork has never been substantial. Yeah. This album cover is actually kind of a cool image, but
the cover is definitely cool in this too. I'll just put that. Yeah, that's definitely a pretty sick piece of art.
Yeah.
kind of reminds me of, Japanese style stuff,
Yeah.
but it's definitely cool. But yeah, these guys, there's not a lot to complain about with what they're trying to do. They get blackened in places, it gets skanky, it takes on some of that skank and roll to just little moments of it. It's not like it's like blaring in your face like a band like Death Breath does, where it's a straight up kind of death and roll, or what Entomb started doing or whatever. But you hear it, you hear it on there. And I don't know, I think it would have been cooler to hear them doing something different, production wise, but I don't know if it would have necessarily sold the record the right way for what they're trying to do. So, but I digress.
Right. Helen.
Definitely a strange band. It's funny that Jim mentioned the thing that shall not be, because there's a couple of tracks that remind me of kind of a weird, slowed down death metal, strange thrash heaviness that's going on here, specifically on a couple of tracks, Pulse of Towering Madness and The Resurrectionist. Both those tracks reminded me of that kind of style. Once this is the production definitely aids in this, but there's something that's like death metal / we've kind of talked about a little bit of blackened feel. To me, though, it's like not quite psychedelic, not quite prog, but there's enough confusion in terms of how they're writing songs that sort of take me out of a comfort zone that I traditionally have with death metal. And the fact that they cannot rely, especially in this era in which bands are sort of venturing deeper into sort of saturated guitar tone, this is like a complete opposite direction for me. All the eeriness and discomfort is completely focused on the songwriting as opposed to anything that's happening on the production side. And that's where I think the chasm sort of matches up for me, is they blend that sort of weird, eerie, proggy, psychedelic, but still true death metal for me. I guess the greatest thing I would probably contribute is I don't listen to this record necessarily looking for, like, I want it to be complicated, is for its difficulty, for its, in the same way that people can latch on to something. I'm going to go here. They're going to latch on to their Voivod record and they're like, yeah, it's weird, it's strange, it's different. You know what? This is my glimpse into that. All right. So the same way that it is unorthodox and strange, like I'm here for that. That's what I like about this record. And specifically within like this era of death metal, I completely understand, like, at times, and like when TJ talks about it falling flat, it's like they'll take a turn in the songwriting and it doesn't give me the kind of end that I want or that I'm looking for. And in that sense, I'm sort of left like confused, and like that was an interesting choice in songwriting. But all of it feels very intentional, like in the way that they remove whatever level of comfort, like they're deconstructing what you traditionally get with death metal. The subgenre influences, it's almost like thrash, or I don't want to call it traditional heavy metal, but this is a flashback. But when we first did the Cormorant, I think that was the first one I did on the album.
Yeah.
Like, the vocals grounded that record as an extreme, whatever, record release, metal record release. And at times I almost feel if they had a different vocal approach, there would be a very different sort of subgenre association with this record.
Yeah.
The guitar work's that unique and different. So at times I almost felt like this was venturing into like this riff almost sounds like if you took away a little bit of the distortion and all the rest of the screaming vocals, like this could almost be like a weird trad metal riff. So very strange songwriting, and I'm absolutely here for it. That's kind of why I'm into this record, and I kind of gravitate towards, like TJ mentioned, like getting into bands who are constantly sort of pushing on boundaries. They never leave death metal on this, but I constantly feel like they know where the line is. They're habitual line steppers. That's what this record is. So,
Nice.
but yeah, that's what I kind of like about this band.
I mean, the things I have to say here are not going to sound favorable, but don't confuse an atypical style for good songwriting, because this album I found to be, I like it. I like the fact that they're trying innovative ideas. They're kind of breaking through some parameters that are often too frequently tread in this style of music. Let's face it. But I mean, the songs all start off very fierce and triumphant, very stately movement and good memorable hooks in the riffs. But the songs often, this is kind of their formula on this record, the songs often erode into wandering ideas that feel very innovative in intention, but lack a full realization of what or where the destination is. They seem like they want to go somewhere with these songs, but they don't know where to go. So they just kind of revel in the fact they're doing something different. Initially I appreciate, they're doing something kind of cool and interesting here, but multiple listens, the songs don't really resolve themselves. They don't really, the journey is just kind of leading you into the woods and getting you lost. It's like they don't, the songs for me don't have a resolve to them, if that makes any sense. It's a formula throughout this album. There's songs like New Depths. It's more of a normal sounding song and maybe a little less interesting from the rest of the album, but it's faster. It's a little bit more straight ahead, head down, head banging. I'm not saying they all need to be normal. I appreciate, their deviation and the structure, but it almost feels like some of the songs don't have structure. They start off with a certain path and then they deviate into these weird bridges that don't really end. They just kind of wander along and the song ends. It's like, okay, you build me up for something very cool to happen. Okay, you take a sidestep on this bridge. I can appreciate that, but take me back again, resolve the song, finish the song, bookend it with something that I've heard before, recall. There's just a lot of unfinished songs to me on this record. And that's, again, sounds negative. I've listened to it. I've enjoyed it, but there's just always been something nagging at me. Something's bothering me about it. And that's what it is. So, I mean,
you weren't taken to release.
I was
Marty?
not. Yeah, they were edging me the whole time, and I didn't appreciate it. I didn't get the wonderful climax of a song like "Welcome Back" or something where I'm on a giant flying bird or Pegasus with the cape and hair, my Fabio hair flowing in the background. But
a gilded unicorn with a ruby horn while wearing enchanted jetpack.
Yes, but I mean, again, this sounds very negative, but I think the songs. This sounds like a transitional album to me. I would have loved to have heard an album 2 years later that continues on with this mindset, but better songwriting. I want more traditional song structures, maybe, have your cool ideas in there, but go somewhere with the music. That's yeah. Does anybody anything to add to that? Kellen, I know you're a bigger fan of this album than I am.
That's kind of what I was thinking too, Marty, though. Sorry to butt in, but you offered it up. So that's kind of what I mean by falling flat, is that there's moments where that it just, some of the riffing and stuff just kind of goes off into the weeds a little bit and just feels like, maybe I would have done something different, or you were expecting something more out of it. I still think that overall, I feel like the songwriting was really well done, and they're, but in your point too, I think the transitional, I would like to I'm eager to hear the EP and to see what they're doing now, and it would have been nice to have seen them do something after, but sorry, I'll live back.
Oh,
to tell 'em.
that's why I threw it back out there. I mean, I'm kind of going against the grain of what you guys said. And again, I'm trying to be negative about it because I didn't hate the album. I just think the songwriting is undercooked. But Kellen, did you have something you wanted to add?
No. I mean, I totally 100% see where you're going. Like, there's so many times I've listened to this record consistently for over a decade now, and I still kind of, that's an odd choice, or that I, like, I still have that feeling. So, I don't think there's anything, like, I don't feel like I need to like a rebuttal to your statement.
No, the funny when you say that's an odd choice, I could just like the band in the rehearsal room, guys, look at me, I'm doing something, and they're like, dude, what are you doing? I don't know. We'll keep doing it. Okay, what do we do with it? I don't know. Throw it in the song. End it. Don't fuck it up. End it. That's kind of what it feels like to me. And Rick brought up a good point here. Reminds me when you all did Miscreants. This sits in a very similar lane as that Miscreants album. And Miscreants just got signed to Season of Mist, by the way. I think it's because we helped. You're welcome, Miscreants.
But okay, can I just on that level though? I do think Miscreants there's far more like direct connection to the bands that you talked about that evening, right? Like I
Pestilence mainly.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So like I feel that band is, and I don't, this is not a criticism, but I think there's greater sort of genre confusion with Necrovation, where I think that's less so with Miscreants.
Jim, did you want to throw in anything before we move here, or you good?
No, I'm good for the next topic.
All right, let's talk about the production. Jim.
Sure. I've been waiting to talk about this because now this is one element. Like you and I, Marty, we differ on the songwriting. I actually like it here a lot. But
it's all taste.
Production
it's a taste
is
thing.
definitely
It's totally a taste thing, and I get that.
Yeah, no, and that's cool. No, it's good because I can see where you're coming from. I do see where you're coming from. It's when you don't have something like when it's so kind of out there, it's hard to get a grasp of it. The payoff is hard to come by, but I do. There's a big problem with the production on this that I really wish they had made a different choice, and that's the guitar sound to me is really thin on
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah, and now taking a step back, I can say that is what adds to the oddness of the album. That is what adds to it being more, on just the unusual side, and so in that sense, that production choice plays well with like their overall aesthetic. Like we are different, we are going to make strange turns. We're going to go off the rails every once in a while and go somewhere you don't expect us to go. So from that perspective, it makes sense. But I just can't help it when I'm listening to death metal. I want to hear a thicker tone. Now, I keep saying that there are a lot of there is black metal sound in here, and just some of the riff choices and stuff like that. The way that they, like I said, they don't palm mute a lot of their 16th notes. They just let them, they're open 20, like that. Those kind of choices are like black metal sort of choices. So it works. That's a great sound for black metal, but I do wish that they had chosen like a thicker guitar sound, because I think that these ideas for me would have played out just as well, even better. In fact, if they had just kind of turned up the gain a little bit there, on whatever pedals that they were using. But so yeah, production wise, I definitely have a ding there, though I do understand the choice, because especially when you're thinking about 2012, a lot of the cavernous death metal thing was going on then, and so they're saying, hey, we're going to go the opposite direction. We're going to go like kind of more of a thin, black metal kind of a guitar sound, a distorted post-punk, if you will. But I think it still would have been better served for my personal taste if it would have been heavier. And also another problem with the production I have is I really struggled to hear the bass. I feel like the bass was kind of like really low in the mix on this record. And maybe it was the headphones. I was using a different set this week. Long story. I won't bore you with details, but I just couldn't really hear the bass as well as I like to. So the drums, that's the saving grace though. The drums on here, on their instrumental, which is appropriately enough called the transition. It starts out kind of like a lot of this album, like you expected. Okay, it's an acoustic, and sounds really pretty, classical guitar kind of a thing going on. And then boom, the electric comes in. I totally thought it was just going to be an acoustic interlude. And so, when the whole band comes in, I was like surprised but happy. I'm like, okay, cool. Where are they going to go now? These guys keep, surprising me. And man, the drums on that song are awesome. Like, go back and listen to the kick drum on it. It sounds like a marching band kick drum. It's like boom, boom. It's like not as like timpani sounding as like the intro to the Usurper on To Make Ethereon, which I can't remember what that was called now, but it has that sort of like throughput, like almost like a reverb on, and it permeates the rest of that instrumental, and it's actually used to good effect on the last song too, or at least it stands out to me on those songs more on than ours. So, but yeah. So overall, like I think the drum sound kind of saves the production on the record, and I think the vocals are well done too. They ride atop the music very well. I think he's got not quite an enunciation going on where I can understand everything he's saying, but there's just a clarity there to his vocal style that I really appreciated. So production wise, great job on the drums, great job on the vocals. Guitars sound just not for me.
TJ.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Jim on a lot of the guitar tone choices. I don't know if it was just, they're trying to get that, if that's the aesthetic they were going for. I mean, it seems like it because the overarching feel of the record is very cohesive. So I don't feel like they're, scrambling to try to figure out what they want to sound like by the end of the record. So, but it just struck me as that's what makes it sound so black. And I don't know that any of the riffing necessarily comes across that way, but
no,
I don't know. Now, as far here, Jim's comment about bass. Now, listen to it at home here in the sex dungeon on the main system. I was picking up all the bass lines, like it was just like rolling out at me. But I've got a powered subwoofer and stuff. But it was like, so I don't know. It might have been your headphones. It was way more present than. Because I initially started listening to it on my work set.
Yeah, I didn't have my usual ones I was having issues with, so I had to go to a crappier pair. So I was wondering if that was a problem. But so that's good to hear.
I mean it was blowing out at me. It was really good. I think overall the production on this is pretty solid. The drums are good. The vocals live in a really good spot. They seem to know what they want to be when they're doing this. I don't get a sense from the production choices and the stuff that that they're trying to experiment with anything or whatever. It's like they want, I want this to sound like this, and this is going to come across like this, and but beyond that, I really don't have anything else to say about it. I don't, it just kind of is what it is. There's nothing really spectacular or crazy about it. It's just solid across the board. I think everything kind of stands out where it's supposed to. You can hear everything. There's no crazy trickery or anything going on here. It wasn't really, they weren't, this is 2012, so they're not diving off into the cavernous depths of Sanguis Sugabog and all whatever else we're listening to these days. So, but yeah, I mean, I think they did a really good job on the production with this overall.
All right, Kellen.
So I will differ here with the guitar tone specifically. And I also wonder how much of that is actually the guitar playing that informs that. Meaning, like, there's so many strange sort of guitar jangly lines happening on this record that I wonder if that's why it feels so thin. But there are a few moments on this record when everything sort of locks together, and it's plenty heavy for me, which I think was a little bit different than like the Theory and Practice record that we talked about, which felt a bit more like mid-centric. And I think I had a complaint on that record. It felt a little bit thin in terms of the guitar tone.
Yeah.
Everything here feels very much intentional, and I think it, to that point about the guitar specifically, it is deliberate and part of the appeal on this record. So I actually have no complaints. I don't have any, like the bass sounded fine to me. I love the drum sound. Yeah, I really don't have any. What's great about it is, in my opinion, it's still as thin as the guitars can sound for a death metal record. I would still classify it as a dark record. I think it still sounds dark.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally agree there, man.
Yeah.
And I will add that when they downpick, though, all that low end frequency comes there. It's for some reason when they're doing other styles of riffage, like it's not as present for me. But for some reason, whenever they downpick, it's like it's as heavy as anything else out there. Like for when they do that and they're palm muting, and like again on Pulse of Towering and Madness. I mean, it's as crunchy as anything. And like the Doom part that they fade out in on the last track, that thing is got a lot of presence. So it isn't like, to your point, it may be really due to the riff choices that's playing, because there are, when they play certain styles of riffs, like I don't feel it's thin. It's just, as a majority I do, but there are moments where it's, again, just as heavy as anything else at the time. So
Sure. You're not wrong, Jim.
Yeah, I just would have liked to have heard it with. Yeah, I would like to have heard it with a little bit heavier of a tone is all. I don't think it kills anything. They, like I said, I think they make their point with it. It steers the ship in a different direction tonal wise, and so you're picking up this blackened tone, and I don't know if that's really what they were going for necessarily, but that's kind of the way it comes across. This record is definitely dark and heavy. It's just kind, it's just a hair splitting criticism,
Sure. If you wanted to say it sucks, then don't worry about it. It's all good. Go ahead.
No, I wanted to hate this record. No, I didn't really. I didn't think I'd hate it.
Not this time, just most of the time, right, TJ?
Sorry.
I wouldn't have it any other way, brother.
Are you good, Kellen?
Yeah, good.
Our buddy Noah was over here today hanging out, and we were listening to this record kind of loudly on my studio monitors. And I do like the fact that the guitars are panned hard left and hard right. And I think that's part of the thinness. It sounds to me overall like they recorded the music for this live. It sounds like they set up, they played, and maybe added the vocals later. It's kind of the impression I got, but the overall tone is dry. It's very dry, and it lacks gain and bite in the guitar tone. It leaves the production feeling spacious, the way they've got the hard panning, but it's thin. I do like the snare sound. Jim is correct. The drum sounds cool. The snare's got a good snap to it. The guitars just seem thin, and I too, as a guitar player, wanted a beefier, fuller guitar tone to fill in the holes. I thought, but the sound they do have on this, it kind of sets them a bit apart. Is it a bad sound? It isn't. It totally isn't. It works for them. I just find myself wondering what this would have sounded like with more depth. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of layering either. Like I said, one guitar line's playing one thing, the other's playing the other thing. You can hear them clearly both playing, and it's a little bit disorienting, which is kind of cool. I did appreciate that as well. I just wish the song went somewhere. Is all, and they had a heavier guitar tone, but a heavier guitar tone may have filled in all the holes. I don't know. It is what it is, and it's point of preference. But I do think the record, it could have been heavier. The guitar tone could have been heavier. Least favorite songs, Jim.
Yeah, this one's a tough one. I guess not so tough. I mean, Necrovation Insurrection is, a great first song, again, no beating around the bush, just right into it. It's like, okay, cool, you're in for a ride. Sometimes I like that long intro build up kind of things, but sometimes it just feels like it gets a little overbearing, in our favorite genres. Sometimes I just want to get right to the music, and on that front, this album delivers. So that first track, a lot of love for that reason. So, and we mentioned Dark Lead Dead. I just love that weird scale wah thing. I have no idea what the hell is going on there, but I really, really like it. It's just different and really cool. And then I got to call out the last song too, man. I know I'm naming a bunch here, but 1, 3, and 9. Is it Illmouth Madness? Is that what it is? Yeah. Okay.
I don't know,
man.
That's what I think is Illmouth. I think, but
yeah. Kellen confirmed it. Yeah. But man, that first riff at the very beginning, and yes, it's a crunchy riff. I think it's perfectly placed. I love it. And man, when it just goes to like Death Doom about midway through the song, man, I am in for the ride. I'm in for the journey, and it just kind of just like how it just fades out on the downbeat, man. It ends strong in a really in a way where it's not pummeling you, but it's taking you off and just dragging you in chains into the darkness, So that's definitely the vibe I got for Illmouth Madness, and I loved every time it came around. So I'd almost say if you don't listen to anything else, like listen to that last song. And I really, really like that one. That one's probably my favorite.
That was that was In the Mouth of Madness, right?
Yeah,
was that the last one?
Yeah.
Illmouth Madness. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Illmouth, yeah.
So other than that, I really don't have there's no bad song on this record. Commander of Remains, the fourth song, it's got a lot going on, and at first it was almost too much for me, but on subsequent listens I learned to like that one too. So probably not my favorite, but still a good song. So but definitely for me, Illmouth of Madness, and and see, even TJ knows he's got Dark Lead Dead. Dark Lead Dead, man, go for it.
All right, TJ.
Yeah, so my least favorite track on here is the transition. That just felt so out of place. It almost come across like electronic, and I just, I tried, it kind of improves as you get into it a little bit, but it was so far out of left field. It just seemed all weird. Now, I don't mean to be contradicting what I said earlier about, trying different things, whatever, but it just didn't feel like it fit on the record. It almost had a different production value to it, and that it just seemed weird, and I don't know, I didn't care for it. But then the first two tracks on the record, the Necrovation Insurrection and the Dark Lead Dead, those tracks are just cool. The Dark Lead Dead, they go into that weird, bridge on that, and at first, the first couple times I listened, I was like, what in the frick hell are they trying to accomplish with this? And it was so kind of, it sounded like a damn calliope at the carnival or something a little bit. But, I listened a few more times, and it's like it was kind of started making more sense, and, stylistically, and, just kind of the, kind of the insanity of the part, and the madness that kind of, conjures up, so it ended up becoming I really think it's a really cool track. So by and large, I think all the songs on here are fairly solid. Not, Marty's point notwithstanding that there might be, some journeys that could be better improved on this, but I think they're pretty solid. But that's my, my take on best and worst.
All right, Kellen.
Okay, so yeah, that like quiet dun 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 that little part, I absolutely every time it's like the ocean recedes right before the tsunami comes back, sort of deal. But
the tsunami that couldn't find the shore.
You know what? I'm talking here. I'm talking. All right. Okay.
It went out but never came back. Where did it go? Where'd all the water go?
Right. Okay.
Sorry.
Yes.
Didn't mean to interrupt.
It found a different shore. Okay.
Yeah.
But
In a
yeah,
very
I
non-significant
love that
island
track. I
somewhere
love
in the middle of nowhere.
Dark Lead Dead there. 100%. And then I think both Tim and Joe in the chat were mentioning Sepulchreal, the track number 6.
Yep.
It starts off with like the most sort of death metal, sort of double bass, sort of riff, whatever. It's almost one of the more immediate moments on the entire record in terms of establishing it as a death metal listen.
Yep.
But it gets a little more complicated and broken up towards the back end of it. So it sort of rewards you initially, and then if you're interested towards the back end of it, I really dug that one. The two sort of odd mid-paced heavy ones that I mentioned earlier, Pulse of Towering Madness and Resurrectionist. I think to some degree they sort of accomplish the exact same thing, but to a lesser extent than Illmouth Madness that Jim brought up. But yes, I understand that the instrumental is a very strange instrumental, right? It starts in with like acoustics, and then by the end of it, you're like in the orchestra. Like it's an interesting choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was also how crazy it was.
But like if that's the worst thing I can say about this record, it's just strange instrumental. That's, fair enough. I still think they're probably the tracks that I dislike or that are proved to be most challenging are Commander of Remains, and even to some degree New Depths. I kind of felt like the record lost some momentum in the middle there. I don't know if it's just one of those like situations where it's a bridge track that maybe later on you get more interested in, but it's just there are other tracks around it that I always feel I want to jump to at this point when I listen to it. I'll just kind of move over them. So anyway, but they're really outside of that instrumental. I know the complaints. I don't have any other major complaints or poor songs on this record. I'll brace for Marty's
the assault.
Yes, the assault that he's got. All his tomatoes are ready, rotten vegetables in hand. Here we go.
I would just like to say, just throw out this little bit of a quip here that Voivod wrote better songs. Just saying.
Here we go.
The songs go somewhere in Voivod's land.
He's been waiting the whole show to say that,
Kellen. The worst song is the transition. The instrumental, it feels like a section of a song they didn't know what to do with. They didn't know how to start it or finish it. So it's just a random and unnecessary chunk. Here it is. We wrote it. We're gonna include it. I also, my least favorite of the metal songs is the Pulse of Towering Madness. That song wanders. It's mid-pace for a brunt of it, which really kind of like, okay, lethargic wandering. Where's it going? It's interesting, yes, but it lacks excitement and intensity. Favorites. I liked Necrovorous Insurrection. I love how it starts out super intense with grit and teeth-bearing intensity. It feels raw due to the speed and the raw vocals, but halfway falls off, man. It just does. They introduce this weird, obtuse bridge that just wanders off to the end. It doesn't go back to anything. They don't recall anything. They don't really do anything interesting with that break, other than the break itself is interesting. I like that Sepulchreal song, more of a heavy end to it and simplified harmonies. It carries more of an impact. What else have I got here? The Resurrectionist. I like the obtuse punk vibe in that song. It gives the riffs an openness. I like the fresh take on it. It sets them a bit apart, but it seems hard to pigeonhole it as into an OSDM category, which I know that doesn't mean shit. I mean, who cares? What they are. they're definitely doing something different. But those are my favorites and least favorites for sure. And Judgment, final thoughts, Jim.
Yeah, a really interesting record. Definitely surprised by what I hear. I didn't know what I heard. Necrovation. I expected some really quality death metal coming from Kellen, but I didn't expect something kind of this bizarre and with a name like that. But I was appreciative of it. It's nice to be pleasantly surprised, and I certainly was. And so yeah, I mean, for me, it's a solid 8. It would be even higher if the guitar sound was more to my liking, but on the riffs alone, that's what gets this thing up there to the 8, and also the crazy drum kick sound, which I love. but
Right on.
But yeah, final thoughts. A solid 8 for me.
TJ.
B-. No, man, it's a cool record. I would definitely like to hear some growth in the band and some different things. But I think it's really solid overall. My few criticisms notwithstanding, but I think it's like B- really for me. So it's a cool record, definitely worth the time to listen to. I just I think there's I think they, like Marty said, to hear them grow past this and see what they're doing now, what could have been or whatever, that's I'm curious for that for sure. But
they're gonna surprise us all and go backwards and just have caveman riffs.
New metal,
or they're gonna end, or they're gonna show up on their album cover wearing cod pieces and all oiled up, riding unicorns. Because
then Marty's buying 2 copies.
Marty will be happy.
Finally, they came around to my way of thinking. Yes,
exactly. So,
Kellen.
Yeah, so I love this record. I think it's one of the last, like in terms of newer death metal bands putting out unique, interesting listens. For sure, I recommend it. If you want, sounds a little bit too strange, you can go back and listen to their first record. It's a little bit of an easier listen. Probably a little bit more familiar death metal in sound. So
yeah,
but if I like some of the time, I like the weird stuff, and this is definitely an interesting, challenging listen from a young death metal band that offered a lot of promise in 2 records. So we'll see what happens in the future. Dolphins and cod pieces may be there, but I'm most likely not.
Probably not.
I think. But yeah, well, this EP,
Marty can dare to dream.
Yes.
But I am excited to see that there are signs of life from this project. For example, I would much rather have a couple of 4 releases from this band versus where like Tribulation is nowadays, or other bands from America, like for example, like that's a band that I don't get too excited about anymore. But when I saw that there was a new Necrovation sort of EP out, I kind of got interested. Oh, did I die?
No, you're there. We can see you.
My computer just like blew up in front of me. Hold on. Sorry for that. Technical difficulties.
Oh, you're good. You're there.
Okay.
No, yeah, you're good. Yeah.
Nonetheless, so in closing, sorry for the distraction there. I'm very excited to see what happens with this band, even though they've been away for a while. And if you are interested in this sort of like moment in death metal, I definitely recommend this release. It's one of the more unique ones within the catalog.
Right on. And again, I've sounded rather negative on this. I guess I was leaning into that a bit to be a contrarian a little bit, but I see this as a very ambitious and inventive record, considering what was going on in 2012, where the OSDM scene ended up. I think it's adventurous. I think it's fun. Like I said, I think this is a very transitional record. 2 years after this one came out, it would have been really interesting to hear where they landed. If they would have got the loose ends in the songwriting figured out. I just think that a lot of songs, I mean, this first Necrovation record, it sounds like the new Necrovation record if you took away all these weird bridges that they do that go nowhere. This is the heavy, triumphant, nasty, snarled death metal side of the band, which is on this self-titled for sure, but tempered with, you know, these musical journeys, which again, I like the idea and concept. I don't necessarily love what they did with it, but again, if I found this record cheap, I'd buy it. One of the reasons why I think that not a lot of people, like Jim say, never even heard of it. Both of these records came out on Blood Harvest, and that's kind of it's a Swedish label. They don't get a ton of distribution over here in the States, do they, Kellen?
No.
I mean, their releases, you want to pay the long dollar to get them, or the occasional distro will get a handful of CDs. So, I mean, it's not like they had a lot of press or distribution behind them. So there's a reason for it.
I should say that this self-title came out in Agonia.
Oh, it did? Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if they have much.
I don't know if that helps my cause.
I think Agonia is a little bit bigger label than Blood Harvest, but you know, they're kind of probably more effective in Europe. But yeah, it was a cool pick. It was really awesome to be refamiliarized with this band. Again, I haven't touched this CD on the shelf since I got it, however long ago that was, and so it was really cool to listen to this one again. Oh, here we go. Thanks, man. Nuclear War Now, carry Blood Harvest in the US. So there you go. And to close this out, Jim is the one presenting our next Sonic Soiree.
All right. Well, we're going to take it back about 19 years before this record came out. Back in Marty's, where his family came from. And we're going to go. We're drawing down the moon, you guys. We're drawing down the moon.
Gates of Nana's where that's at.
That's what we're doing. And speaking of Nuclear War Now, this is the Nuclear War Now release. Too big to fit in my typical vinyl cases. But anyway, yes, excited to talk about this.
Good record.
I actually haven't listened to this in a long time. So I, kind of waited, for this week. I haven't played it yet. So,
yeah, yours, Noah. I'll save it for the stream. I just at this point I'm feeling like payback is just it's where I got to live with my next pick. It's just I got to get even with everybody. All you pukes.
Don't worry, my next pick you're gonna love. You're gonna love the next pick I get. I have an obscure Swedish classic that's going on the rack for us. It'll be good.
Nice.
Well, that's a good pick. I haven't listened to that in a while, and it'll be kind of fun to discuss something.
Yeah, me either.
It'll be good.
You're gonna love being taken back to the Finnish moon, Ted.
Yeah. At least you didn't pick Black Blood. That thing is a train wreck.
I remember when Beherit happened. I was there when Beherit happened. I bought one of those once.
You probably bought the Oath of Black Blood, which sounds like absolute dog shit. This one sounds pretty good, actually.
Hey, if you don't want Oath of Black Blood and you got it on vinyl, I'll buy it from you.
No, I don't. No. I dispossessed myself of those many moons ago. Right on.
Well, everybody, please go check out Killing for Company. Go check out Eihwaz Recordings. Go check out The Glorious Dead. All links are in the description. And we're trying to give you folks a lot more content these days. We've put out 5 reviews now, Mondays, typically. Simon will be on another review Monday. I can't remember the name of the band, some Australian band. Kellen's got one coming. Ben's got one coming. I've got another one coming. So yeah, lots of content for you to go through. Check out the reviews, please. They're poorly viewed, but we'll get it turned around. We'll get more and more people checking them out. But
they're good.
They're fun. They're fun.
They're good.
Yeah. But anyway, everybody, we appreciate you and great guys. It was always fun, and we'll see you next week.
Saxon, do
here.
you want to talk about the big Saxon on?
Oh shit! Yeah.
Oh shit!
Friday. Yeah. I'm about halfway through the Saxon catalog, and if I was a teacher grading Saxon's paper, there's not a lot of good grades. We'll just say that right straight up.
Get out the popcorn and the sleeping bags for this one, boys and girls.
We'll have
an all-night affair.
King Fowley and Darcy 6 Strings 9 Lives channel will be joining us to go through hopefully the entire Saxon record, Saxon collection. So get ready to that. I'm burnt out on Saxon. Yeah, I was burnt out just thinking about it. But no, I'm putting in the work. I'm putting in the work, and there's been some good stuff where I'm starting to get into the era where it's actually I like. So it's been a lot of grade D minus. Yeah. But anyway, cheers everybody. We'll see you Friday, and we'll see these fine gentlemen next week. And take care, everybody. Have a great one.